Hi, dear listeners. It's Jillian, your podcast host, and I'm just coming on to let you know that this conversation is a continuation of last week's podcast conversation regarding treatment. This particular discussion is all about the discernment of pausing treatment, taking a break, or maybe even stopping treatment. And I know that that can be a challenging thing to discern. And so I just echo last week's suggestion that maybe you could just have a piece of paper next to you. And if there are any kind of big feelings, any big thoughts that are coming to you, that you would just jot them down and that you come back to those and just know that we're praying for you in this time, that this conversation might be really pertinent to your heart right now. And we see you, we hear you, we know you, and we hope that this conversation might be a help to you in this season. Welcome to the Springs in the Desert podcast. We're those friends that you can take with you wherever you are on the path of infertility. Hey there, listeners. Welcome back to the Springs in the Desert podcast. I am Jillian, your host, and once again, I'm so eager to be with you on the podcast. I feel so privileged to be able to talk about important conversations like the one that we're going to have today. I feel even more privileged to be able to talk to the people that I am talking to because we have such lovely resources and friends and experts in the community. And we have two of them with us today. Once again, we have the lovely Clare Kane. How are you today, Clare?
I'm well, Jillian. Always so thrilled to be able to talk with you and the other members of the team and the contributors who are doing this good work. It's such a joy to be able to chat with you all.
Right back at you, Clare. And joining her, we have the lovely Caroline Gindhart. How are you?
I'm excited to be back on the podcast.
Woohoo! Me too. Listeners, this podcast picks up from last week's podcast. So if you haven't listened to that and you would like to listen to a conversation that's about treatment, it might be worth either pausing this one and going back and starting there, that it might pick up from there, or you could just listen to it after this one to get the full picture of the conversation. But this is just a continued conversation. So know that there's some more question answer style with our experts here, and just make sure you don't miss that episode either. So ladies, last episode, we talked a little bit more on kind of guidance while pursuing treatment. Guidance in choosing your provider and how to navigate some of the difficulties that come to your marriage or to your personal discernment when you're in that. And I would like to have a conversation today about kind of guidance in discerning taking a break from treatment, to pausing if I know there are those in our community who are in that space. And so just want to talk about that. And I want to start, I think, with marriage, because that's, I think, a beautiful place to start. And we sometimes, it's not always the case, but maybe even often the case that one sort of the underlying health issue might be affecting one spouse. The side effects might be being experienced by maybe more so one spouse. Not that we are one when we are married, and so there's always going to be a sharing of the cross in that, but there might be physical or mental repercussions for more so of one person, one of the spouses. And I just want to kind of start with maybe you, Caroline. How or what might a provider say to a couple who's in front of them that this might be happening? Like, how can they support each other in that? How could they maybe advocate for them or help care for them or maybe take some of the kind of weight, or what would that look like?
Yeah, I like what you said, Jillian, about when you're married, you're one, because it's, oftentimes that one spouse is bearing the brunt of treatment or has more diagnoses that are contributing to the infertility. But I always like to say that this is like your fertility together. So even if the man comes back with a totally normal seminal fluid analysis and the wife has a list of diagnoses, it's not that has infertility and he doesn't have infertility. It's you both have infertility because you're married and you're one. because it can be really easy to feel like, well, if my husband married someone else, then, maybe he'd be able to have children. Well, he didn't decide to do that. He decided to marry you. And so this is something that you're in together. And so I think, like all things in marriage, communication is key. And one spouse asking the other, what is something that I can help you with during this particular treatment regimen? So some of the practical ways that, for example, husbands will get involved in their wife's treatment is coming to appointments, or if they have to do injections and the wife doesn't feel comfortable with injections, he'll do them for her, or he will put the observations on the Creighton model chart. Or if she's recovering from surgery, that's a great time for you to clean up the house and cook dinner and just allow her to heal from that. And so those are just little practical things, but don't be afraid to ask your spouse, and also even tell your spouse, hey, it would make me feel really supported if you came to this appointment, or just being a second set of ears, or if you did this household chore for me because I'm really stressed out from my medical regimen, or I'm having this side effect and don't feel up to the challenge of this, not being afraid to communicate your own needs.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Claire, I'm wondering if you could maybe speak into, maybe it's a couple is a place where one of the spouses is really struggling, maybe not casting blame, or not, they both want it so badly. But maybe one of the spouses can't do a whole lot to accomplish the regimen, to actually, whether it's taking the medication or doing the thing, and that there might be just some hard feelings there if the spouse who is responsible maybe for taking the medication is struggling to remember that, or is just having a hard time because maybe they're already discerning that I would like to pause this. How would you maybe encourage them to have a conversation around that?
That's a really good one. And I think it comes down to exactly what Caroline was talking about, which is communication. It comes down to communication and self-awareness, right? Feelings do not have a moral quality. They're neither good nor bad, right? I like to describe them with clients as they're challenging or not challenging, comfortable, less comfortable, pleasant, less pleasant, right? So if a spouse is realizing, I'm starting to get fairly resentful at my spouse's forgetfulness, or I'm starting to get really resentful of maybe whatever it is in terms of accomplishing this shared goal, right? I think sometimes it can be good to go back to basics in talking and saying, recognizing that feeling in yourself, not judging yourself for it, because it's a feeling that's coming from. And then maybe where is it coming from? Because feelings often arise, especially the less pleasant ones, arise from wounds that are unaddressed, often unacknowledged. Where is that coming from? It's coming because I'm frustrated because we're not receiving this. And it's really hard for me to be angry at God, because sometimes it feels like I'm throwing emotion at a wall, right? An immovable force, right? The Lord, He's not giving us what we want. And so it's a heck of a lot easier to project that anger or resentment onto the person closest to me, right? And so I was like, okay, maybe I should do what I can to recognize, to have compassion for myself, to have compassion for her, or in oppositely for him, and recognize and maybe just reframe that the goal of marriage is fruitfulness. The shape it takes is 100% out of our hands. 100%. Is we don't create life. Caroline, you talked about that as a clinician, like clinicians who come to this with a very warped mindset that somehow they're able to get people kids or make children. That is a problem, right? And that is a problem because it's a mistake in terms of a clinician's control or power, right? And I think sometimes in the thick of treatment, when people are suffering and there's a lot of grief and worry and time spent, I think sometimes couples can slip into this mindset where they have to earn it, and they get very angry if they see somebody else not pulling their weight, right? And then it's okay. Now we have to step, again, no judgment. Those feelings are normal, but like we got to take a step back because we're called to be fruitful, but the shape it takes, we have fairly little control over, some, but very limited, right? Very limited. And being like gentle with ourselves in this process is often, I think, really the best way forward, right? And to talk about that, hey, I'm noticing some big feelings coming up. Can you talk to me about how you're feeling? Because I'm feeling really sad and angry. Feeling really sad and angry. Yeah, I'm often supposed to be, I noticed. Okay, thank you for noticing. Can we talk about this? Because I think that the opening of conversations is often just being honest with ourselves about what we're feeling and where it may be coming from.
That's really helpful, Claire. And it brought to mind maybe an opposite sort of situation where maybe, and perhaps the fact that this is potentially the case in the marriage is an indicator that a break would be good. But if one spouse is giving all of the sort of responsibility, all of the sort of just do whatever it is that you would like to do, I'm here to see what happens. It's just up to you. And how might, or maybe what would be maybe some good question for spouses to ask each other? I would guess maybe that in that situation, if there's a disconnect between pursuing a treatment that maybe they do need to refocus together and see what their plan is going forward. But that might be challenging to handle together as spouses. And so, Claire, what might you say to that couple who they maybe only one of the spouses is really pursuing the treatment in that case?
That's a really good question. And I think that's in some senses actually probably the more common scenario than some spouse judging the other spouse for not like working hard enough. Do you know what I mean? I think oftentimes I think sometimes for some couples it can feel like one spouse is charging ahead and the other one is like being a bit dragged forward. And I think that can be problematic because resentment will build there too on both sides often. Some spouses sometimes can feel like I'm being hauled into maybe an intensity of treatment, a commitment to a financial outlay, a commitment to like having a spouse who is maybe feeling depleted by a regimen, like all that kind of stuff. And then on the other side, maybe the spouse who is more gung-ho, shall we say, about this whole thing might be like, why are you dragging your feet? Don't you want this too? Like all of that stuff. You could probably write the screenplay for those fights, right? fairly easily. And again, it's about communication and it's about a lot of self-reflection. And it's about coming together and saying the hard things, like leaning into the awkward. I love you. Where are you in this? Like what are you thinking? How are you feeling? Right? Okay, you're feeling like you really want this. That's awesome. How's your body feeling? How's your heart feeling? I'm feeling like somehow we're ships in the night. And that you want one thing and I want the same thing, but not with the same intensity. Are you starting to feel resentful about that? Really leaning into the awkward, hard questions and being willing to sit together and talk those through that's love right there. To be trusting enough to bring this forward and be like, I see you. And I think in some scenarios, often it's the spouse who's being dragged a bit or propelled along this path. Maybe this is not the course I'm looking for. Those are really difficult conversations to have, but essential because you've got to be equally yoked in this moving forward. Otherwise, big, challenging feelings start brewing, often in terms of resentment or like one spouse is impeding the work of the Lord. There can be some very strange, unhelpful theological syllogisms that emerge in marriages, like when people are trying to like work this out without actually talking to each other. Yeah, so all of this is to say is lean into the awkward, lean into the hard, love each other well by oftentimes challenging. I'm seeing you twist yourself into a pretzel for this. That worries me because I love you and I wish and I hope the Lord provides this for us. I'm concerned for you. That's a hard thing. On the other hand, it could be someone who this is really intensely important to me. I really feel this is the call of the Lord and somehow you're dragging your feet. Can you talk to me about that? Is that actually what's happening? Or is that something I'm fearing, I'm projecting on you? Those are important questions to have and important conversations to have.
Yeah, that's so helpful. And I do think you're likely right. That is probably the more common experience for couples that they're at different places in that discernment. And Caroline, I'm wondering if, as a provider, is that sort of situation, or are there other kind of signals, maybe too, as a provider, that maybe suggesting taking a break, refocusing, rediscerning, just relooking at things? What I guess, quote unquote, like treatment burnout? What are some of the sort of warning signs of that as a provider?
Yeah. I love everything that Claire just said. And I've had patients too that they think that their spouse like isn't as invested as they are. And then they bring up those hard conversations and they find out, oh, my spouse just copes a different way than I do. Or maybe they throw themselves into their hobby and that's how they cope with it. And it's not that they're disinterested. It's just that's how they've learned to cope. And so that's why, of course, a communication is so helpful. And I would say, yeah, burnout is pretty common. And so some of the like times that I will bring up a break to a patient is if they've been going through infertility treatment for a prolonged period of time and that they're doing a really like intense regimen with ovulation meds and triggers and daily ultrasounds and injections and just high intensity treatments. Those are ones that are really easy to get burnout with. And so we try to protect our patients in ways in like certain treatment regimens. We say, okay, you do it for 3 months and then you have to take a break because we understand the high degree of burnout. So there are specific times where we kind of institute that because we've seen how burnout patients get and how intense those regimens are. Other times are if you feel like you're in that like just fight or flight response like all of the time and you're not able to come down from that and you find that you're anxious about all your labs and all your medications and every little thing that you eat and just things like that. That can be a sign of burnout, or on the flip side of anxiety or even connected like symptoms of depression where you're like not interested in going and doing things that you normally do. You're deciding, oh, I'm going to forgo that vacation because I'm supposed to get an ultrasound next cycle and I really want to do this regimen. Or, oh, I'm not going to call my friends because I don't feel like talking to anyone. And just where there starts to become like imbalance, or if you feel like your relationship with your spouse is being negatively affected, or if a particular treatment has been like rough on your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, like those are all times to take a step back and say, what can I do to recalibrate? And so I always tell patients, taking a break is not giving up hope. It's not saying that I'm never going to try again. It's just saying right now, as we talked about in the last episode, I'm discerning that my mental, physical, emotional, spiritual health is right now more important than intense treatment, which is good discernment. And so, yeah, a break can be 1 month, 2 months. You don't have to set a time on it, or you can set a time on it. Different people do better with, okay, by X time, I'm going to do this, and giving strict guidelines. Some people that isn't good for them, and it's better to just leave it wide open and see how it goes. And I think you have to know yourself and know what path is better for you.
Yeah, thanks for that answer, Caroline. So I'm so grateful for this conversation, as I am not necessarily like currently in the midst of heavy treatments, like those daily regimens that you were talking about, Caroline. But I can remember in my like the beginning of my journey, even just like getting one test result back caused a lot of anxiety for me. Like I need to get this result because I need to get to the next step. And if I don't get to the next step, I won't get to my goal. And I had to learn who I was and what was motivating me and really take stock of that to be able to, I think, discern what is health for me. Where are my husband and I in that process? And that's so helpful. And to not take away good, exciting things like a vacation. It's okay to enjoy yourself. It's okay to just do the things that you love to do or that you're excited to do. And I'm sure from the mental health perspective, Claire, maybe you would have thoughts about that. That could probably do not necessarily like for the fertility journey, but like overall health to do the things that you love to do and that are bringing joy to your life probably has huge repercussions that are beyond what we can even measure. Do you have any thoughts about that, Claire?
Yeah, just exactly what Caroline said about in the last episode. I thought was wonderful about her patient or patients who were going on vacation, be like, go eat the things, enjoy yourself. Don't think about anything. Just go and be you. Treatment is so wonderful that we have these resources to clear the field, to prepare the field for God's good work and the husband and wife good work, right? Together to do the bringing of life. And that is beautiful. And at the same time, somehow the fact that for people who struggle with infertility, it is work can somehow make us feel like we're reduced to the faculty of our fertility or infertility. And it's tough because these are like murky questions, because the reason that infertility is such a suffering is because it's literally on the level of identity. Like this is our viscera, literal physical viscera. We are made to be fruitful, and it is really intense. And at the same time, remembering that we like vacations, doing the things you love, investing in the hobbies that make you feel like yourself and not some sort of infertility workhorse, okay, like to put this very bluntly, are crucial for helping you weather this suffering, whatever it takes, like whatever shape that takes, whatever plan you, your spouse and the Lord work on together to do what you can in ways that are healthy, to prepare and to clear obstacles to the natural function. Awesome. But when it gets, in a sense, beyond, when it becomes work that is drudgery, when it becomes work that is crushing you, that is the time when, the kettle is whistling, all the alarms are blaring, and it can be very tempting to just put on headphones, shut that out, and just forge forward, right? It just really can be. But the way to be good to yourself and to your spouse and just is not to do that. It's to take the break. It's to take a breather. Remember that you're a person, not just a uterus and a pair of ovaries. You are a person, and everything that you can do to help remind yourself of that. Vacations, silly Netflix binging, right? Whatever floats your boat, right? In terms of helping you remember who you are in your unique personhood and help you remember who your spouse is in their unique personhood. Lean in, because it's only going to make this better, easier to weather, and help you emerge from it with whatever outcome unfolds, whatever gifts the Lord has. He's going to pour out in super abundance, but you're going to emerge from it healthier, not diminished, if you take care of yourself.
Yeah, that's so important, what you just said there. And I was thinking back to a time I was on a very strict diet. And I remember just thinking, I love chocolate chip cookies, love them with every fiber of my being. And I hadn't had one in a very long time. And I just remember I was like, I don't know if someone had made them, or I was looking at a cookie. I was staring a cookie in the face. And I had just such this, like a deep sadness. I can't have the thing that I want because I'm on this diet. And having to just sit there and say, is that true, Lord? Is that true that I can't enjoy the things that I want? And is this one cookie going to mess everything up? Or is it just really having, I think in the last episode, we talked a lot about advocating for yourself with your provider. And I'm wondering if in this just treatment discernment of pausing, taking a break, is advocating for questioning your own thoughts, the own scripts in your mind of what you think you have to do, what you think, is the absolute necessary, perfect thing to do, and what the Lord is calling you to do, what fruitfulness is, challenging what those beliefs are about yourself and about your marriage and who you are as a person. I think that's what I was facing when I was at least looking at the cookie, that I needed to ask myself, I think, some big, hard questions, and my spouse too, and just be open to what the Lord was going to say about that. Because what I think behind that are fears, right? Fears that if we take a break, if we stop altogether, and maybe it's we want to just stop now, we'll take a look at this down the road, but we don't, as you said, Caroline, we don't want to put timelines on things. We just want to stop and be in the pause, just live in the breath right now. I think those fears are pretty prevalent. And I have a question for you, Claire, and then I have a question for you, Caroline, about this too. Claire, what would you say are some of we've, I think, already named some, but what are some of the biggest fears of stopping treatment? Some of maybe those wounds or those obstacles of just saying, this might be the best for me right now.
Yeah, I think some of the fears are I'm not enough. What I'm doing is never going to be enough. If I stop doing what I'm doing, this will never happen for me. You will never give it. If I do not exhaust every single possibility and by default exhaust myself, I'm not doing the Lord's work. I'm doing my part to be fruitful. My spouse needs this from me. That's a big lie. I won't be fully a woman. I will never experience fruitfulness if it doesn't unfold this way. We could just go on nauseam. And I think what's interesting is that behind them, often, just to take one or two, is if I don't exhaust myself doing this and turn myself into a pretzel, doing treatment and continue it, even when I'm burnt out, God is never going to make it happen. Often behind that, these fears, is this weird destructive logic we talked about in the first episode about, I have to earn this. That's the lie. I have to earn this. And behind that is, why do other people not have to earn this? Why does it just happen? Why doesn't he love me enough to give this to me when I long for it so much? Right? And I think that's the root. That's the grief, right? Where often these lies we tell ourselves are running from some very deep wound, right? It's a deep wound. And sometimes I think the wound is so big and so scary and so apparently unanswerable that we develop these weird lies as logic. It's almost like, okay, well, I've got a rule I can follow and that will get me where I need to go. Except it's not a sturdy rule. Unconsciously, we're like, yeah, that is horse patooey. So even though I'm going to act and live my life from that logic, I understand at a level of the unconscious, right? Get in there with the psych speak, right? But truly at the level of unconscious, this is not true. So the only way I can make it true is if I lean in even harder. Man, we just turn ourselves into pretzels with those lies. And that's not freedom. That's not fruitful. That is destructive, right? At the level of what is our job? It's to be open to fruitfulness. That is the only thing we do, is to be open. Can't make it happen. Take yourself off the hook. Because, girl, you will never be that powerful. You cannot. Or gentlemen, if you're listening to this, apologies, did not mean to be sexist. You can't make this happen. And you know what? You were never meant to. That was never your job. If people listen to this, leave with only one takeaway, it would be take yourself off the hook.
Claire, you said that so well, that, yeah, those fears are behind that, are these things that we are believing that are often false, and they won't help us to be able to achieve whatever it is that we're pursuing. And I hope, yeah, that to just lay down the cross that isn't yours, that I just have a sort of visual, which I might not be able to adequately express, but we're carrying someone else's cross, Jesus's cross, right? Like a God-sized cross that we don't have the ability, we were never meant to carry. It wasn't fashioned to sit on our shoulder. And so to just lay that down, and it's okay. And it's good actually to lay that down so that you can pick yours up, the one that God is calling you to. And Caroline, I'm just wondering, as a provider, the room that you're meeting people in, whether that's virtual or in person, that holds a lot of emotion, a lot of conversation. And if you, let's say, we're in a room with a couple who's really in this, they're in the thick of this isn't working, but there's a lot of fear, a lot of grief, a lot of concern that if we make this move, that it's going to be the sort of the wrong choice, that God cannot work within a different structure. As a provider, what might you say to to that couple? What might you, just help them see that this is a possibility, that this is the good? Because we talked about discernment between two good things, but if they're not quite seeing it as a good, what might you say to them?
Yeah, so I think I'm very blessed to work like at a Catholic practice, and it's pretty well known to the general public that we're a Catholic practice. But it has, and obviously not all of our patients are Catholic. So I try to, because I don't know how to frame this other than bringing God into it. I ask them, is there a particular faith that you practice, or do you believe in God? And then that's because I only want to invite that conversation if they're open to it and talk about that, because we do believe a lot of lies about like God too, that he wants to punish us for something, or he's absent, or he is willing our suffering, or we believe a lot of lies about him. And so I try to just assess if they're open to hearing about, no, like the Lord is hurting just as much as you are, and like wants to bring forth life, but he also like desires like your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health. And it's okay to take a break. It's okay to say this treatment is too much for me right now, or to question your provider and ask, what are some things that I can stop right now because this is too much for me? And God's not going to punish you for taking a break or decide not to bring a baby now that you've taken a break. He wants you to be the best version of yourself and live your life to the full. And if that involves like taking a break to like minister to another part of your health, he's like rejoicing in that, because he hates to see you like crushed under the weight of this cross. And so I guess I don't know how else to have that conversation with a patient other than to bring the Lord into it, because he is the author of life and he has so many desires for us and suffers with us. And it's hard to make decisions without bringing the Lord into it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. The Lord has a lot to say about that. And so there's an opportunity for this beautiful time to do that. Ladies, I want to close here soon, but I just want to give each of you maybe an opportunity, sort of heart to the listener. Any final words of encouragement if someone is in this season where they want to pause, they're fearful about that, or they're in the pause and maybe there's anxiety about that. What's something that you might say to them? I'll start with you, Claire.
I think the most important thing is to be compassionate to yourself wherever you are in that space. There's this great line, a great scene in C.S. Lewis's Paralandra, like his first novel in the space trilogy, that I always think about. There's a scene where the character Ransom has arrived at this Eden-type planet, and he is encountering this Eve figure, and he is all of a sudden realizing that there is this presence, big P presence, in this space that he has like never encountered or experienced this way before. And he is putting his hands in his pockets, and like he is so full of the fidgets because it's so uncomfortable to be in a space where he has never let himself be known. He has never let himself be known or encountered God in that way, right? I think that sometimes one of the things that suffering can do is that it can stop us in our tracks if we let us. And it's a moment to let yourself be known, and to let yourself be known by you, right? To come to a sense of, I'm going to stand in stillness before myself here, right? Nobody ever sees all of themselves. There's always going to be parts of ourselves that are hidden to us because we're built for community, right? Or there's going to be things about ourselves that other people who love us see about us that they can tell us about ourselves that we just can't see. Well, it's a good and a beautiful thing. But often the suffering of infertility, we want to flee from ourselves. And I think the thing to do, like the most compassionate thing you can do, just be present to yourself, even if it's painful. Sit and be like, what is the most compassionate thing I can do for myself today? I think I've beaten this dead horse in other podcasts, Jillian. I tell that like at my poor clients, almost every session, not every session, I'm changing it up, but almost every session, I end with, tell me how you're going to be good to yourself this week. Tell me how you're going to be good to yourself this week. How are you going to take care of yourself? Right? No, I want to hear one specific thing. One specific thing. What are you going to do this week to take care of yourself that really will help you feel like yourself? Because when you're in the thick of treatment or you are contemplating a pause, right? Being good to yourself is part of caring for the whole you. So if you're listening to this and thinking, oh, this is me, right? Just be like, good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that hopefully in this moment, listening to this podcast is part of taking care of yourself. But don't stop there, please. Right? Sit with yourself a little bit and think about, what do I need to take care of myself right now? And maybe it's the discipline of saying, I need to stop for a bit. Or maybe it's the discipline of saying, I'm going to give myself 2 more weeks, and I'm going to put on my Google Calendar, send myself a timed email saying, take 5 minutes and think about whether you want to continue this right now. Give yourself 2 weeks, right? Give yourself time, because I think for so many people struggling with this, the clock is ticking and it is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, right? And giving yourself the time to sit is crucial for weathering it, okay? Because it's not like the Lord is going to be like, oh, sorry, that 5 minutes of possible conception passed you by, you weren't working hard enough. That's a lie. That is not how he works, ever. That is not the God we know and love. So being compassionate to yourself and allowing the time to take care of yourself.
Thank you, Claire. How about you, Caroline? What would be your last words of encouragement?
Yeah, I love so much everything Claire said. I talk to my patients about the importance of self-care all of the time. And like part of that, as we discussed in the last podcast episode, is like advocating for yourself. So I just encourage you it's scary to bring up your concerns to your provider.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you, Claire. I'm so grateful for this conversation. Listeners, know that if this is the space you're in, that we are praying for you. We're here to walk with you. We're here to, like I said, pray for you, pray with you, pray around you, whatever it is that you need, we are here. We're here for you. We will see you next time on the Springs and Desert podcast. God bless. Thank you so much for joining us for this Springs in the Desert podcast episode. We would be so grateful if you took a minute to rate and review us so that we can reach more listeners. Don't forget to check out our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram, and go to our website, springsinthedesert.org, where you can sign up for our newsletter and community prayer list, read our blog, and register for virtual and in-person events. Most importantly, remember that God loves you so much, and so do we.